It's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video is our 5th video and our last video for our Christmas elf crochet along. Now here is Posh Pete, and of course this is Posh Polly that we're making together. Today's video, like I said, it's our last video, and we're going to be making the hat. We're going to be adding hair, and I'm going to show you on Posh Polly how to make some braids. And then we're also going to add our Christmas elf smile. Now, this is a free crochet pattern on my blog, and I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. To view all the videos right here on YouTube, just click that link up above that says playlist, and then click on the playlist for the crochet along. So what you need to finish up your elf doll is a color of yarn for the hat, and I'm going to be making mine in pink, and I'm going to be using the blue and the fun fur for the trim and the pom-pom. And remember, if you're doing yours in white, you'll need the white for the trim with the fun fur as well. And of course, a Christmas color if that's what you're doing. It doesn't matter what colors you use. You just need to make sure you have a worsted weight or medium weight, number 4 for the hat, and then a worsted weight or medium weight for the trim and pom-pom along with your fun fur. And then you're going to need a color of yarn for the hair. And I'm going to do mine in this bright yellow just to add a pop of yellow. And then the last thing you're going to need is a color for the smile. And I'm going to use this pink and give my Polly a nice big pink smile. We're still stitching with our F-hook, 3.75 millimeter crochet hook. You'll need a needle for weaving in ends and for sewing the hat and the smile on. And you'll need just a little bit more stuffing because we're going to put just a little bit of stuffing up in the hat so it stands up nice and tall. If you don't want your hat to stand up and you want it to flop over, then you can skip the stuffing portion. You'll also need your scissors, and one thing to always keep handy when you're working with fun fur is your lint roller. It makes cleanup quick and easy. Alright, we're going to start with the point of the hat, and we're going to work our way down. Then we'll add the trim and the pom-pom. So I'm beginning with my main color that I'm using for my hat. I'm going to make my slip knot, and then I'm going to chain 2. Now we're going to stitch 5 single crochets in the second chain from the hook. Don't count the loop on your hook. There's the first one, there's the second one. So we'll go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through both. And we're going to stitch 5 single crochets right in that chain 2. There's 3, 4, and 5. Now, don't forget, you're going to need a stitch marker because we are stitching in the round. So I'm going to go ahead and put my stitch marker right there. We're not joining, we're stitching in the round. Alright, whoops, that's the wrong tail. We don't want that. Alright, so now for row 2, we're going to stitch 2 single crochets in each of those 5 single crochets. So we'll go right in that first one and stitch 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Move that tail out of the way. 7, 8, 9, and 10. So now we have 10 single crochets because we stitched 2 in each of those 5. I'm going to move my stitch marker, and I always just move it up like that. Keeps the rows nice and even. I know exactly where it begins and ends. Now for row 3, we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 10. Oops, got a whole string there. There's 9 and 10. All right, so again, I'm going to move my stitch marker. So for row 3, we stitched 1 single crochet in each of those 10 single crochets. Now for row 4, we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in the next and 2 single crochets in the next. And we'll repeat this all the way around, stitching 1 single crochet, then 2 single crochets in the next. And this is going to cause us to go from 10 single crochets to 15. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. There we go. 2 single crochets in that last one, 1 and 2, 1 and 2 all the way around, and turned our 10 single crochets into 15. We're going to move our stitch marker. Make sure I get it around that yarn. And then for row 5, we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 15 single crochets. There's 13, 14, and 15. All right, so now I'm going to move my stitch marker again. And this is the way that it should look after row 5. Now, this is the inside of our hat, so we want to flip our hat out. And you'll see that it has that cone shape that we're looking for the top of our hat. And this is the way that it should look after row 5. All right, for row 6, we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in the first 2 single crochets, 1 and 2, and then we'll stitch 2 single crochets together. And then we'll repeat that all the way around, and we'll go from having 15 single crochets to having 20. So we'll stitch 1 single crochet in the next 2, then we'll stitch 2 single crochets in the next, 1 single crochet in the next 2, and 2 single crochets in the next. 1, 2, and 1 and 2. 1, 2, and 1, 2. So now we have 20 single crochets. We're going to move our stitch marker. And then for row 7, we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of the single crochets around. I completed that row stitching 1 single crochet in each single crochet. I'm going to again move my stitch marker. And now for row 8, we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in the next 3 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, and then stitch 2 together. 2 single crochets in the same stitch. And we'll repeat this all the way around, stitching 1 single crochet in the next 3, and then stitch 2 single crochets in the next. We'll repeat that all the way around, 3 and 2, 3 and 2, back around to our stitch marker, and that's going to give us 25 single crochets. All right, I'm back around. I'm going to move my stitch marker. And then for row 9, we're going to just stitch 1 single crochet in each single crochet around. I completed that row of stitching 1 single crochet in each single crochet around. Pull that stitch marker out, and I'm going to move it up to this next row. And for row 10, instead of stitching 3 individuals, we're going to stitch 4. So we'll begin with 4 single crochets, 1 in each of the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, this is 3 and 4. And then we'll stitch 2 single crochets in the next stitch. And then we'll repeat that all the way around. 1 single crochet in the next 4. There we go. And then 2 in the next. And this is going to get us up to 30 single crochets. And so we'll just repeat that, working around, stitching 4 individuals and then 2 together. All right, we finished that row. We now have 30 single crochets. We're going to move our stitch marker, and then we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 30 single crochets. And I think by now you can see the pattern as it's working, making that nice cone shape for our elf hat. So I'm just going to continue around, stitching 1 single crochet in each of the single crochets around until I get back to my stitch marker. Again, I've completed that row of stitching 1 single crochet in each of the single crochets around. I'm going to move my stitch marker. And now for row 12, we're going to stitch 5 single crochets. Let's see, there we go. Before we stitch the 2 together in the same single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then we'll stitch 2 single crochets in the next stitch. And that's the repeat for row 12. 1 single crochet in the next 5 single crochets, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we'll stitch 2 single crochets in the next stitch. And we'll repeat that, working all the way around this hat, or around this row. And that's going to give us 35 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch. Repeat that around till you get to your stitch marker. So I've done the repeat of 5 and 2 together, 5 individual, then 2 single crochets in the same all the way around. Back to my stitch marker. I'm going to move my stitch marker up, and then for row 13 we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each single crochet around. And again, we'll have 35 single crochets. Alright, so I finished that row of just one single crochet in each single crochet around. Again, I'm moving my stitch marker. And then for row 14, instead of doing 5, we're going to do 6. So we're going to stitch 6 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we'll do 2 single crochets together, and that's the repeat for row 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch. And that's the repeat around for row 14. We'll stitch that all the way around till we get back to our stitch marker. I completed row 14, stitching 6 individual and then 2 together. I'm going to move my stitch marker again. And then for row 15, again, we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in each single crochet around. And by now you should be noticing that the hat is nice and wide. And the reason that I wanted it to be nice and wide is so that it fits nicely on the back of the elf's head, and we don't have to add a bunch of hair back there. For the boy elf, we just add some loopy stitches on the front, and then for the girl we'll do the same thing for Polly, and then we'll add some braids. And of course I'll show you how to do that. It's really simple. And the truth is, if you want your boy to have braids, you can do that too. They're really easy to do. So I'm just going to continue working around row 15, stitching 1 single crochet in each of the 40 single crochets around. So I finished that row of placing 1 single crochet in each of the single crochets around. And now we're ready for our last increase row, row 16, and we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in the next 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we'll stitch 2 single crochets in the next single crochet. This is our last increase row, and in this row you should have 45 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 2 single crochets in the next. And we'll repeat 7 and 2 all the way around till we get back to our stitch marker. So now we're on our last row except for the trim. In our last row is just 1 single crochet in each single crochet around. Now, the hat will fit the back of the head just perfectly, but if you want your hat to be longer before you put the trim on, you can add more rows here of just 1 single crochet in each single crochet around. For instance, if you want it to be more like a stocking hat, or maybe droop over and look cute, you can certainly do that, and make the hat just, floppy is what I'm saying. You can add more rows just by stitching 1 single crochet in each single crochet around for as many rows as you want to. I liked stuffing the hat a little bit and having it stick up just because I think it looks a little bit silly, but it's up to you how you want to make your Christmas elf. Alright, so I'm almost all the way around, and when I get back around here, I'm going to switch over to my trim. I completed that last row of stitching 1 single crochet and each single crochet around, and at this point you should have 45 single crochet stitches. I'm going to be using 1 strand of the blue worsted weight medium and 1 strand of the fun fur for the trim on my hat. And so I'm going to pull that in and snug everything down. Now, in order for my fun fur to stick out better, I'm going to turn my work and I'm going to work from the back side of my work. I'm going to stitch 1 double crochet in each of the stitches. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I have found when working with fun fur that it seems like that the fur sticks out better on the back side. Let me do a few stitches. We're stitching double crochets, 1 in each of the single crochets around. And let me stitch a couple more stitches so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so this is actually the front where I'm stitching, but I'm stitching from behind. And if you look at the front of the hat, see how much more fuzzier that is? And I think it makes a much better trim. It makes a much fuzzier fun fur when you work it this direction. Now you don't have to if you're more comfortable working the other direction. And all I'm doing is stitching 1 double crochet in each of the single crochets around. See how much fuzzier that side looks than this side? I've stitched my double crochets all the way around. See how nice and fuzzy that is? Alright, so now I'm going to join to my first double crochet with a slip stitch, and I'm going to cut my yarn. We need to weave those in, but for now I'm just going to pull them to the inside of the hat so you can see how the hat looks at this point. And we need to make the pom-pom. And the pom-pom I do is really a simple pom-pom, and there's no cutting. We're going to leave it loopy because if you cut the fun fur, you're going to end up with hair everywhere and it's not going to lay pretty. So what I do is I take 1 strand of the blue and I just cut about a 10 to 12 inch piece, and we're going to just lay that down, and then we're going to take the 2 strands, the blue and the fun fur, together. I'm going to wrap it around my 3 fingers about 8 times and cut that. Alright, then we're going to take these loops and lay them right across that string, and we're going to tie 3 knots. 1, and that's off center, so we're going to move it a little. 2 and 3. Now we're not going to cut the strings, but we are going to look, make sure we don't have any that are bigger, like how that one's sticking out a little bit. We might want to cut those because that's the ends, but we don't want to cut all these loops because if you do, you'll end up with a great big mess and it will start to unravel. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to put our hook right up through the center of that hat, and we're going to grab those 2 strings and pull it to the inside. Alright, so I'm going to turn it over so you can see. And here's the beginning string we had when we started the hat. And so we're going to pull these strings through, and we're going to tie those together. And you know me, I always put 3 knots, 1, 2, and then the last knot we're going to do is we're going to do it this way. We're going to pull those down, bring those around, just like that, and cut that. Alright, so there is our hat. A pom-pom that's floopy, but it's going to stay. It's all loopy. It looks cute with our trim. We need to take a few minutes and weave these in, and then I'm going to show you how to put this on your elf. We're going to take our hat, we're going to add some stuffing, and it's up to you how much, and you want to make sure you've got room to put the head in there. And we want the hat to sit all the way to the back like this. And I designed it this way so we don't have to add a bunch of hair in the back of the hat. All right, so then we're going to take a needle and thread yarn that matches what we're doing, and I'm using the blue because I have the blue trim. And what I do is I start at the ear and I set it so that you can get it right next to that ear, and then I'm going to leave that, and we're just going to tack this down, especially on the front here. Just go in and out, making sure it's where you want the hat to sit. If you want your hat to sit back a little farther, you can. Just remember, we're going to come back in and add the hair on the front. And I just sort of eyeball it, see where it's sitting. And I want to make sure it's sitting the same above this ear and above this ear so it looks the same. And then you just keep going around the back. And the back should sit down low because we don't want to have to add any hair on the back. We're going to assume all the hair's up inside the hat. Now, when we're finished with this, I'm going to show you how to make the hair and also how to make some cute little braids if you want to have some braids on your little elf. My Polly likes braids, so I'm going to give her some braids. And what I do, see, I'm back around where I started. I have extra yarn, and I just continue to go around stitching and tacking that hat in place until I run out of yarn. And a piece of yarn I cut is about 18 inches long, so that I have plenty of yarn to go around it so that hat's going to stay put, because many children will grab the elf by the hat and swing it around to have some fun. And I want my elf to be able to withstand playtime with the grandkids. All right, so I've just gone around and around until I'm comfortable that's going to stay put. And then I'll weave these two ends in. I'm going to go that way. You know, and as we've done before, just keep going back and forth. And then I'm just going to go right down in his head and come up through the hat. Just like that. Tie that little knot and clip, and then ease it inside, and we'll do the same thing with this one. I've added one of Polly's braids, and I'll show you how easy that is to do. Now, I wanted to have it be right behind your ear, so I cut 3 strands of yarn that's about 18 inches long, which is way longer than we need. And we're going to take our crochet hook and right here behind her ear, we're just going to go in her head just like that and pull those strands through. And then we'll just pull it so that we have the strands like this. So that gives us 6 strands of yarn. All right, then we're going to sort of move those around so that we have 2 strands of each that we can braid, and then we'll just braid those. There we go. And you can make the braid as long as you want, and if you want to use more than 3 strands and make a thicker braid, you certainly can. All right, let's see if we've got these about the same size. All righty. And then I'm going to use pink on this side because I used blue on the other. I just take a strand of yarn and put it at the bottom. Tie the bow. Don't want it quite so big. All right, now I'm going to cut, so that you can see it, the bow, and then I'm going to cut the hair so it looks about the same. And now Polly has 2 braids, and they come out from behind her ear. And then the last thing we want to do for her hair is we want to take a strand of the yarn that we want to use for the hair, cut another piece about 18 inches, thread it onto your needle, and we're just going to make some loopy stitches. And we want to have hair go from here all the way across. So what I do is I just go in, and I'm going to leave that, and I sort of pull it up and go back through and leave a loop. And we'll do this all the way across. You can make big loops or small loops, however you want to do it for the hair. I just like to leave it a little bit loose. We're just making little loops like that. However you want to do it, and you can add more or less. Let's pull that a little bit so it's not quite so big. Okay, and it's really, this part is really just eyeballing. All right, so I'm going to go right back through and just make a few more loops, just so it looks like she's got a little bit of hair sticking out underneath the edge of her hat. Oops, pull that back out a little bit. See how that loops up? And then I'm back over here where I started. Isn't that cute? All right, I'm actually going to make a little knot here because I don't want those loops to come out. Make 3 knots and clip. I don't do a lot of knots like that for crochet, but sometimes I do if I want to make sure it's going to hold nice and tight. All right, so there is her cute little hair and her 2 little braids. And the last thing she needs is her mouth. So I'm going to cut a piece of the pink. And I want her to be very happy. All right, so here's her nose. I'm going to kind of go from this cheek down. I'm going to leave a piece of string there. I'm going to go across here. And then I'm going to make sure I'm lined up over here. And let's see how her smile looks. Does she look happy? All right, so I like how that looks, so I'm just going to go back across, and I like to try to cover up the initial stitches, so there we go, kind of offset it a little, just go right the way we came. Thickens it up just a little, and then weave those in. There's that one. Now I left this string too short, didn't I? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in. This is a little trick. Thread that on there. It's a little bit short, but I'm just going to go in and go right out the back of her head and pull. All right, so now Posh Polly is ready to go visit her friend Posh Pete. So we finished up Posh Polly, and here's Posh Pete. They're best friends. And the last thing I wanted to show you is if you want their hands together like this, Just thread onto your needle some yarn that's the same color and just make a few stitches just like this to connect their hands. And then you can tie that off. Now I don't want Posh Polly's hands connected this time, but I really liked it on this one because I put the stitches in his knees and we can bend his legs up like this and he can sit like that. I didn't do Posh Polly's legs and I didn't do her hands together. And I just kind of wanted to show you that you can make this doll in just about any way, any colors that you want to, and add your own style and make your own Christmas elf.